I'm getting ready to do the next set of spawn bags. So far I've got 20 cups in here. I'm going to do another 20, so I'm going to have 40 dry cups, which will yield roughly 80 hydrated cups, which will give me 10 cups per spawn bag. 10 cups of rye berries in here, and I'm going to go ahead and rinse everything. It's probably going to take about 4 rinses to get this clean. This stuff comes pretty dirty. You can see kind of how filthy that is. All the dust and dirt and a bunch of different particles. Just kind of pour it slow. The rye will kind of settle on the bottom. You'll get a couple floaters. You might have to push down a little bit here and there. All right, so now that we've got this grains all rinsed up here, I'm going to go ahead and put 4 tablespoons of gypsum powder in here. So it's basically a tablespoon per 10 dry cups of rye. And then I also like to add a bit of coffee. So this is just some spent coffee out of a French press here. I'm just going to add a bit. That's probably good for that amount right there. And then we'll mix this up and let this sit overnight. And then you're going to want to add, I'd say, about 6 or 7 inches of water over the top of the grain. That way when it expands overnight, you're not going to have any grains poking above the water line. All right, so these grains sat for about 18 hours overnight. We're going to go ahead and fill up a couple of these stock pots and then heat up these grains for about 5 minutes, and then we'll dump that off, and then we'll lay them out to start drying and get to the proper consistency. All right, so those of you that don't have a drying rack, this is what I'm doing. I just use my kitchen table, and I put down just a couple bath towels to keep any of the moisture off of the wood itself. There's just a contractor bag, a heavy-duty contractor bag, and then just paper towels on here. Pretty simple. And there's an overhead fan. So we'll just lay all this stuff out on here, and then, I don't know, every 20 minutes or so, 15 minutes, come through and just kind of rake across it and stir everything up that's on the bottom up to the top, and just do that a couple times. And then after about an hour, maybe 2, your grains are going to be almost pretty perfect. All right, we're getting these up to a little bit of a boil here. These have been going for roughly 5 minutes, so I'm just going to get just a couple more lively bubbles in here, and then we'll go dump that stuff outside. But the point right here is to basically kill any of the endospores and bacteria that have germinated overnight. So it'll make it easier to kill them in the pressure cooker. All right, now I've got this emptied out here. I'm just going to let these drain out. All this steam is water that we want to get off these grains. All the grains are drying out right now. Now's a good time to pretty much go through and just bring the stuff from the bottom up to the top and move it all around, kind of make sure it gets new air on different bits of the grain and such. And this is actually a good time to be scoping out for any kind of exploded berries that you might have in here from your boil. If you followed my instructions or what I've done, you pretty much shouldn't have very many at all of them. Maybe just a small handful of them. I'm even actually having troubles trying to find some. There's one. So you can see, they kind of opened up, they split a bit. These ones just totally fucking burst wide open here. So I don't know if it's a detrimental thing if you don't pull all of them out. I just feel like it's just more room for contaminations and such to take hold inside of this before before your mycelium takes off on it. But now, like I said, now's a good time to go through and just kind of, when you're raking this stuff up, scout for those things and go ahead and pull them out and discard them. And I have 8 of these gusseted spawn bags. I usually go with the bigger ones, but I kind of ordered these ones by accident and didn't like them at first because they were a little bit small, but I actually can fit quite a bit of grain in them. So let's go ahead and open all of them up right now. We're going to be filling basically 8 bags with 10 cups each, and that'll give you about 5 pounds roughly in each bag. And then I can fit 4 bags in a pressure cooker. I've got a couple pressure cookers. I'll be running 2 of them at a time here on the stove. We'll go ahead and start filling these up, and we're going to put 10 cups in each bag. Doesn't have to be exact. Pretty close will work. If you're doing bulk grain at this point, I would imagine you know about the moisture content and how to get that proper. All this stuff's been sitting out underneath the fan for a couple hours now. It's got a really nice consistency. Rolls right off your hands, not wet at all. You could do the paper towel test and throw some paper, throw a handful of them on a paper towel, let them sit for about 20 or 30 seconds, and if you get any water droplets, gotta let them dry out a little bit more. So in the past, I have done these bags at 15 psi, and I've done them for 4 hours. It was just overkill. I feel, you know, some people are like, oh, you got so much grain, you gotta cook it for so long. But honestly, I've been doing 2 hours and with this size bag, and I'm not getting contams, knock on wood. But so far so good. So yeah, I mean, that's at your discretion. I'm gonna go for 2 hours on these. I mean, you could go for 3 if you want to really make sure that you got them, but two has been working for me. All right, so now we're gonna stick our D.I.Y sleeves in here. I'm just gonna fold them up. And I like to fold my excess underneath it. That way when it does the pressure cooking and it sucks all this stuff down or pushes it all down into here, when you go to pull it up later, it's not plastic on plastic sticking, so it makes it a little easier to pull that up. And this D.I.Y basically acts as like a moisture barrier, so it'll kind of trap any of the moisture on this. And we'll go ahead and just set this little thing on here to keep that weight on it. Pinch the sides of the bag, make it nice and even all the way down, and then just start folding them. And I fold these also like this so the filter patch doesn't get wet. Some people will take them and they'll just fold them. I'll just fold them all the way over and then fold them around and then stick them in the pressure cooker like that, or they'll fold it over so that it's on the other side of it. But I don't really care for that method, but feel free to do whatever works for you. All right, so this is what I like to do with my pressure cooker. I'll get some rings from some old jars and I'll stick those on the bottom, and then I'll set another stack of rings on top of that, and then I'll put my plate on there. I've already got this filled up with water, but I like to stick I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch of water or something over the top of this plate, maybe a little bit more. It's not going to hurt. And then something I like to do, which you don't have to do it, but I kind of like to do it just so the water isn't splashing up onto my bags. I'll take basically a square sheet of heavy-duty foil, and then I'll put that over the top. I'll get that all pressed down in there nice and neat, and then that'll line the bottom of it. And then I'll get a towel, just a regular, kitchen towel, and I'll wet that up wring it out, and then I'll set that on the bottom. That way it's not just aluminum foil or the metal on the plastic itself. So it's giving me a little bit of a buffer that holds a little bit of moisture on there too. So I'm going to be running these for 2 hours. So I want to make sure there's enough water in here, because I've burnt so many bags where they've just hit the side, or I've even had tinfoil lined up across the whole inside of this and still was burning bags, running too long. So you'll find your sweet spot, but anyways, this seems to work pretty decent for myself, and we'll go ahead and start loading these bags up in here. And some people, they like to use some more jar rings to keep a gap in here. That way you're getting pressure cooked evenly all the way around. I'm not using it. I'll just set this on top, and then I'll set my other two on top of that. And then what I do is use a dollar store dinner plate. And we'll just flip that upside down on there. And this will help keep your bags from expanding up into your pressure cooker. You don't want it to suck up and block your exhaust port where the steam comes out. Otherwise, it could be some severe problems, to say the least. And we'll just go ahead and cover that up, and we'll turn the heat on. And remember, you should be using cold water in this to start, and then heat all that up. That way it all heats evenly. And we'll get this going, and we'll let it run for 5 minutes after we start getting steam out of this. And we'll put the timer on there for that. As soon as that's done, we'll set our weight on it. And then once that gets up to 15 PSI, we're gonna run this for a solid 2 hours. All right, so we just got up to 15 PSI on this pressure cooker. We're gonna go ahead and set the timer for 2 hours. And this one's just starting to climb now. So once that goes, we'll set a separate timer for 2 hours for this one. And one note is you're gonna wanna regulate your heat. You don't want to climb over 16 PSI, over 15 PSI essentially. You risk the chance of boiling out your water before your sterilization time is complete. So I start out on high, and now that I've got it up to the proper PSI, I can turn this down roughly halfway. Just as long as I stay above 15 PSI, you're pretty good. Just, I want to make a note, you want to regulate your temperature as much as you can. That way you're not boiling out your limited amount of water in the bottom of here before you're done. All right, so I just shut this off about a minute ago. We just hit my 2 hour mark. And this one has about 30 minutes left. So we'll let that one do its thing, and we'll shut these off and let them cool down, then we'll open them up. Tomorrow morning, we'll let them cool overnight, and we'll close these up in front of the flow hood. We're gonna leave that weight sit on here until this thing cools down, until that pressure drops all the way down. Don't even try to take that off right now. Just let it sit, set it and forget it. Come back in about 12 hours or so, whenever this thing has cooled down to room temperature, and then quick here. And the whole time I'm trying not to stick my hands in front of these bags here. Perfect.